David Pastrnak is miffed at the NHL because his home and native land of Czechia is being excluded from next year's Four Nations Cup. And you know what? I don't blame him one bit. We'll also discuss tonight's game against the Flames, do our weekly cup check here on a brand new episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, February 6th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Our Boston Bruins are back in action tonight, hosting the Calgary Flames. It's a game we will preview later on in the show. We'll also do our weekly cup check, where we look at the top 5 teams around the NHL and assess where the Bruins rank among them. But first, we're going to discuss David Pastrnak's reaction to the Four Nations Cup next year, which will be hosted in Boston and Montreal. Quick reminder, though, that you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. So the good news is international best on best competition is returning for hockey. 2026, 2030, the NHL will be allowing the players to go and play in the Winter Olympics. As part of that announcement, it was revealed that next year, 2025, there would be a Four Nations face-off that will be played between Canada, the US, Finland, and Sweden. And those games will be played in Boston and Montreal, according to Frank Saravelli of Daily Faceoff. So we're going to get Connor McDavid versus Austin Matthews. We're going to get Linus Ullmark versus Jeremy Swayman. It's going to be a fun event, and it's going to replace the All-Star game for this year. But when you think of Boston, when you think hockey, you think immediately of David Pastrnak. And while he will be, of course, center stage in Italy for the 2026 Winter Olympics, he won't be part of this tournament. That will be partly played in Boston, which makes absolutely no sense. Again, it's restricted to Canada, Finland, Sweden, and the US. And it's a tough look for hockey, for the NHL, that one of their marquee players. Again, I talked about this last week. NHL just fails over and over to make David Pastrnak a feature player on the league scene. He should be one of the faces of the NHL. He's one of the best players. He has one of the best personalities. And he's in the prime of his career. And to exclude him from an international tournament that will be played in his city, is ridiculous. And he admitted as much yesterday, saying it's a huge disappointment. Quote, "I don't know how much I can say. Definitely not happy about it. I understand that it's a quick turnaround. It's next year, and they probably didn't have much time to make it a bigger tournament." But he continued, Czech isn't there. It's always a lot of players left out, so I'm not going to watch the tournament, to be honest. Just happy that the Olympics got accepted. But yeah, it definitely stings a little bit, end quote. Now, part of the reasoning for this is because the participating countries, because it's an NHL sponsored event, or NHL's putting on the event, each of the 4 countries will be made up of players with NHL contracts for 24-25 season. And they have to be on an NHL roster as of December 2nd, 2024. Now, if you look at teams or countries outside these top 4 nations, other than Russia, who not invited because of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, and we'll see how that affects Olympic participation. But Czechia, Slovakia, Germany, Switzerland, these are other, top hockey countries. They don't have rosters that are made up of exclusively NHL players. So that's part of the reason, or actually probably the main reason why it's limited to these 4 countries, so that they can make sure that they're made up of all NHL players under contract. So it's very unfortunate. You look at Montreal, they have a budding star in Jaromír Sokowski from Slovakia. He won't be playing. Really unfortunate. And Pastrnak going as far as to say he's not going to be watching. He won't be there. He won't be in the building, won't be watching on TV, effectively boycotting the tournament, which is, pretty strong numbers, pretty strong words from one of the NHL's superstar players. But, they're just going to come back and say, well, we're limiting it to these countries because it's NHL contracts. That's not the case when it comes to the Olympics, where the individual countries can build out their rosters with whoever they want. Now, having said that, Pastrnak is very excited to get the opportunity to play at the Olympics in 2026. He said he's so pumped. He has been open about missing the past 2 Olympics and how frustrating that was, 2018, 2022. He's already missed a couple. He'll be 30 by the time 2026 comes around. He said, I hope I make the team. I mean, there's no way he's not going to, barring the unthinkable. He said he's super excited, pumped that the deal got done. It is a couple of years away, but once the news came out, he was definitely happy. And, I always, of course, root for Canada in international play, but always love to root for Bruins on the international stage as well. And excited to see Czechia in 2026 featuring David Pastrnak, one of the best players in the NHL. He should be marketed as such. And it's a shame that he won't be playing with his home country in the NHL city in which he plays. It's just, really unfortunate. And I completely understand his disappointment there. Now, hopefully, Pasta will get a chance to play deep into the playoffs this year. And coming up on the podcast, we're going to do our weekly cup check, where we look at the top 5 teams around the NHL and assess where the Bruins rank among them. It's Super Bowl week, folks, and if you want to get in on the action, there is no better place than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seats on the couch, grabbing your favorite snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 1, 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. And new customers can get in on the action with a fantastic deal right now with FanDuel. Join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. It's not just for football either, NBA, NHL. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And while you're at YouTube, be sure to check out the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, every Tuesday here on Locked On Bruins, we do our weekly cup check where we look at the top 5 teams, check where the Bruins rank among them. Now, NHL action resumed last night with a couple games. More teams back in action tonight. There are still several that are on their bye weeks. So it's a bit of a weird time around the All-Star break. But the Bruins back in action tonight against Calgary. And then there's a huge game on Thursday where the Bruins will host the Vancouver Canucks. Boston, Vancouver tied in points at the moment with 71. Both teams have played 49 games. Vancouver's 33, 11-5. Boston's 31, 9-9. 71 points, 724 point percentage. Vancouver does have the edge in regulation wins, 30 versus 25 for the Bruins. They have the edge in goal differential as well, plus 59 versus plus 45 for the Bruins. They're 8-0-2 over their last 10. Vancouver is, but Boston 7-1-2. And of course, Vancouver just added Elias Lindholm via trade from Calgary, which will only strengthen their chances moving forward this season. So Boston's right up there with the best in the NHL. But Vancouver's got the edge because more regulation wins, better goal differential, and they've already started to load up, where the Bruins might not have that ability this year to load up at the trade deadline because, of course, they went all in and then some last year. Now, the other 3 teams, or the other top teams in the NHL in terms of point percentage, you have the Winnipeg Jets, who are 30, 12-5, plus 39 goal differential. They just added Sean Monahan via trade as well. And then you have Colorado, followed by Florida, and they are tied with Dallas for the 5th best point percentage in the NHL at the moment. So those are your teams that are in cup contention at the moment. Now, we can't, of course, ignore the Edmonton Oilers, who have won 16 games in a row. Yes, they're still 12 points back of Vancouver and Boston, but clearly they are a force to be reckoned with here, winning 16 games in a row to get right back in the playoff race, if not becoming one of the favorites in the Western Conference. Right now, they're 6th in terms of point totals. They're 5th in point percentage, but nobody, absolutely nobody, wants to play them in the playoffs at the moment. It's just, they're just such a force right now. And if the playoffs did start today, Edmonton would be, I believe, they're 3rd in the Pacific. So they'd be playing Vegas. Vegas super banged up, and I would take Edmonton all day in that series at the moment. And in fact, they have a better point percentage despite being 5 points back. They have 5 games in hand. Now, if we're looking at the underlying numbers, 5-on-5, Carolina, the number 1 team in terms of shot attempt differential. They're number 1 in terms of shot differential. In terms of expected goals, they're 2nd. And they are definitely a team to keep an eye on here in the second half. If they can get some consistent goaltending from, who knows, Peter Kochetkov, Frederik Andersen can come back, then they're a team to be reckoned with for sure in the East. And of course, you don't want to sleep on the Florida Panthers, who are probably deeper and better than they were last season. What's helping the Bruins, as well as Vancouver and Winnipeg, is their PDO. Right now, Vancouver has an almost 12% shooting percentage. They have a 92.7 save percentage at 5-on-5. Perhaps that will fall back a bit. Boston, almost 10% shooting, 93.5 save percentage, which is second to the Jets. They're at 103.5 for PDO. And again, the idea is that teams will level off around an even 100, a 10% shooting percentage, maybe 90. I think league average goaltending this year is around 904. And right now, middle of the pack in terms of PDO, 15, 16, Florida, St. Louis, they are at 998. So you can see how it kind of levels off there. Florida, again, a team to be reckoned with. They're getting very good goaltending from Bobrovsky. Their shooting percentage, though, 5-on-5 is pretty low. In fact, it's 30th ranked, above only Chicago and San Jose. So if they can start scoring more at 5-on-5, then watch out. I think one way, and I was reading Fluto Shinzawa on The Athletic this morning. He was writing about priorities for the Bruins heading into the trade deadline. And they're not going to be able to add a ton because of their limited, their limited assets in terms of draft picks and such, but they still can perhaps do some minor deals. I would love to see them add a top scoring winger. Right now, they have depth down the middle. They have Coyle, Zaka, Geeky, Frederick, Bolkvist, Patra, Johnny Beecher, who started the season, has also played center. Perhaps he'll come up, but they're not as deep on the wings. After Pastrnak, Marchand, you have DeBrusk, who's playing better, Van Riemsdyk, who's having a bounce back year, but they could probably use another, bona fide top six. And one guy that I would love to see them go after is Anthony Duclair in San Jose. He'll be less expensive, and he could bring top six value to this team. Because while they are formidable defensively, goaltending, you can never have enough scoring. And he's a guy that I think they should be looking to add. Just my 2 cents there. All right, so that's the cup check. The Bruins among the top teams in the NHL. Hottest team, of course, is Edmonton. Best team, Vancouver. Winnipeg's up there as well. And Thursday against Vancouver will be a huge test for the Bruins to see how they stack up against one of, if not the best team in the NHL so far this season. Coming up first, though, is the game against the Calgary Flames, and we'll preview that one here as the podcast continues. We are big fans of Sleeper here on the NHL Locked On Network, and for good reason. Right now, you can get 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports. And all you have to do is pick whether studs like David Pastrnak, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. So win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. Start paying attention. Check out Locked On Fantasy NHL podcast so you can nail your picks and start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply, but that's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. The Boston Bruins are back in action tonight, taking on the Calgary Flames at TD Garden, the first of a 7-game homestand. There are a couple injury concerns to keep an eye on. Derek Forbort was not able to practice yesterday, and it looks like he's got a lingering injury issue that he's dealing with. We had Parker Witherspoon skating in his stead. Matt Poitras also dealing with some lingering issues as well, so he may not be back in the lineup. It was said that forebore injury is a new one. This is via Ty Anderson, not one that had been bothering him since training camp. So perhaps he's LTIR bound if this keeps up. Poitras, they're not sure if he'll be able to play tonight. So we'll have a couple lineup updates prior to tonight's game and morning skate coming up here in a few moments as well. Now, when it comes to the Flames, they're having a bit of a disappointing season. 22-22-5 outside the playoff picture. It's the first of two meetings between these two teams. They will play again on February 22nd in Calgary. And of course, one of their top players in Elias Lindholm no longer with the team. They're led in scoring by Blake Coleman, who's got 20-20, 40 points through 49 games. Nazem Kadri, 39 points. Yegor Sharangovich is their hottest player over the last few games with 4 goals over his last 5 games. Andrew Mangiapane, 27 points. And then Jonathan Huberdeau, the $10.5 million man, only with 26 points in 48 games. They are strong on D, though. Mackenzie Weegar, Rasmus Andersson, Noah Hannafin, Chris Tanev, Oliver Shillington. That's a pretty formidable top 6. And they also have a bounce-back goalie in Jacob Markstrom. So this is a team that the Bruins should be able to outscore if you're just looking at them offensively. But it's a team that is pretty solid defensively and has the backstop to back it up in Markstrom. Flames rank 17th in goals for per game. They rank only 17th in goals allowed per game, 3.08. The Bruins are 5th in scoring at 3.49, 4th in defense, allowing only 2.59 goals per game. So on paper, this is a game the Bruins should take. Calgary's power play is not great either, ranked 29th. Bruins are 5th. However, the penalty kill for the Flames is quite strong. They rank 3rd in the NHL. Better success rate than the Bruins at 82.8 for Boston versus 84.4 for the Flames. They're coming in losing 4 of their past 5, although they won their last game against Chicago prior to the break, a shutout win for Jacob Markstrom, who has a .912 save percentage. So the Bruins, they might have a bit of rust, as will Calgary, coming into this one. Hopefully they can shake it off quick. This is a team that they should be able to beat. They're weaker down the middle without Lindholm in the mix. There could be some more trades coming up for this team in the coming days. But they're still pretty strong defensively. They have a very good goaltender at Markstrom. So they're going to want to take advantage of their chances because there might not be a ton, really, especially on the power play where Calgary's penalty kill is very, very good. All right, that's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for taking some time to join me. Very much appreciate the support. We will be back with a fresh episode tomorrow, recapping tonight's game, also answering some mailbag questions. So please do send some in via Instagram, Twitter, X, on the YouTube channel, and I'll be sure to answer those on tomorrow's podcast. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here tomorrow on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.